Some of the most celebrated engineering solutions in automotive history turned out to be death traps. Not subtle ones, not theoretical ones, actual, documented, preventable tragedies that kept happening until regulations finally stepped in. And one of the most horrifying examples? Power windows in vehicles from the 70s and 80s that could crush a child's neck with enough force to kill them. The mechanism was simple. The consequences were catastrophic. And the part that could have prevented it cost 11 cents. 11 cents per unit. Some of these will make you angry. Some you will completely understand. And when I get to number 18, you are going to want to write down exactly how long manufacturers knew about the problem before they did anything about it. Because it is not the timeline you think. If you have ever wondered why safety regulations exist, or why older cars feel fundamentally different from modern ones, hit that subscribe button right now. You are about to find out exactly what changed and why it had to. Power windows with no auto reverse. These were luxury features in cars throughout the 70s and 80s. You pressed a button and the window went up. You pressed another button and it went down. Simple electric motors, no complicated sensors. Just raw upward force strong enough to pull a sheet of glass through a rubber seal in any weather condition. That force was between 30 and 80 pounds, depending on the vehicle. Enough to crush a child's trachea in seconds. Kids would lean out the window, a sibling would hit the switch as a prank, or a kid in the back seat would accidentally press the control while their arm or neck was in the window opening. The window did not stop. It did not slow down. It kept going until it reached the top or until someone hit the button again. By the time a parent realized what was happening, the damage was already done. Dozens of children died this way. Hundreds more were injured. And the fix was stunningly simple. An auto-reverse sensor that detected resistance and stopped the motor. Cost per unit in the 80s? 11 cents. 11 cents to save a life. But it was not federally mandated until the 2000s. For decades, manufacturers knew they had the technology. They did not install it as standard equipment because there was no law requiring them to. Beautiful convenience feature. Absolutely inexcusable that it took that long to mandate a solution that cost less than a quarter. Rear-facing jump seats and station wagons. Every kid who grew up in the 70s or 80s remembers these. That little fold-down bench in the very back of the wagon that faced backward. You gotta watch the cars behind you. Make faces at other drivers. Feel like you had your own secret compartment. Parents love them because they turned a 5-seater into a 7-seater without buying a bigger vehicle. In a rear-end collision, those kids took the full impact with nothing behind them but a thin piece of sheet metal and a window. No crumple zone. No reinforcement, no headrest. The rear of the vehicle was designed to be cargo space, not passenger space. When another car hit from behind, the children in those seats absorbed energy that should have been dissipated by engineered crush zones. Federal safety standards eventually required that all seating positions have proper crash protection, including head restraints, shoulder belts, and crumple zone considerations. That effectively ended the rear-facing jump seat. Modern third-row seating faces forward and sits in a reinforced section of the vehicle with proper airbags and belts. The old way was a death sentence in the wrong collision. Those seats disappeared and kids stopped dying in rear-end impacts they should have survived. Terrifying when you realize how many families had them. Solid steel steering columns aimed directly at your chest. Before 1968, the steering column in most American cars was a single solid steel shaft that ran from the steering wheel straight back to the steering box. No joints, no collapse mechanism, no energy absorption. In a frontal collision, the engine and front end pushed backward. That steering column came with it. The wheel became a battering ram aimed at your sternum. Thousands of drivers were impaled or crushed by their own steering wheels in crashes they might have otherwise survived. The mechanism was brutally simple physics. The column did not bend, it did not compress. It went exactly where the collapsing front structure pushed it. Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 204 required collapsible steering columns starting in 1968. The new design used breakaway joints and crushable sections that absorbed energy instead of transferring it directly into the driver. Modern columns collapse and move away from the driver in a crash. The old design was a spear. The new design is a lifesaver. And if you have ever wondered why old car restorations have to retrofit collapsible columns to be street legal in some states, now you know why. Dashboards made of solid metal with protruding knobs. Open the door of a car built before the mid-60s and look at the dashboard. Solid steel. Chrome knobs sticking out for the radio, the heater, the ventilation controls, ashtrays with sharp metal edges, no padding, no energy-absorbing foam, just a slab of painted metal 6 inches from your face. In a collision, your face met that dashboard at whatever speed you were traveling, minus whatever the brakes managed to scrub off. Skulls fractured on radio knobs, faces split open on ashtray edges. Even minor accidents caused devastating facial injuries because there was nothing between you and a wall of steel. The 1960s saw the introduction of padded dashboards with recessed controls as part of federal safety mandates. Modern dashboards are designed to compress on impact, with foam and plastic that deform instead of fracturing bone. The old ones were beautiful. Jet-age design, chrome and steel, and optimism. They were also absolutely brutal in crashes. That is why every classic car restoration guide now includes dashboard padding as a mandatory safety upgrade if you actually plan to drive the thing. Lap belts only with no shoulder restraint. For years, seat belts in American cars were just a lap belt, a single strap across your waist. It kept you from flying through the windshield. It did not keep your torso from whipping forward and slamming into the steering wheel or dashboard. In a crash, your hips stayed put. Your upper body kept going. Spinal injuries, head trauma, chest injuries from impacting the wheel. The lap belt prevented ejection but did nothing for the secondary impact inside the car. 3-point belts with shoulder restraints became mandatory in front seats in 1968. The shoulder strap distributes force across the chest and keeps your torso restrained. Modern belts also have pretensioners that tighten the belt the instant a crash is detected, and load limiters that let out just enough slack to prevent the belt itself from causing injury. The old lap-only design saved some lives and left others paralyzed. The 3-point belt is one of the single most effective safety devices ever invented, and it took decades to become standard. No headrests. Look at a car from the 50s or early 60s. Most of them have no headrest at all, just a bench seat with nothing behind your head. In a rear-end collision, your body moves forward with the seat. Your head stays where it is for a fraction of a second, then whips backward violently. Whiplash injuries, spinal damage, traumatic brain injuries from the skull snapping back and then forward again. The mechanism is pure physics. Your head weighs about 10 pounds. In a sudden stop or impact, that weight becomes a wrecking ball on the end of your neck. Head restraints became mandatory in 1969. They had to be a certain height and a certain distance from the back of the occupant's head. Modern active headrests move forward during a collision to catch your head even faster. The old cars left your neck completely unsupported. Beautiful, long bench seats, nothing to stop your head from snapping back like a Pez dispenser. Thousands of people suffered permanent injuries that a 4-inch pad could have prevented. Gas tanks mounted behind the rear axle with no protection. For decades, American cars mounted the fuel tank in the most convenient spot for packaging. Often that was directly behind the rear axle, outside the frame rails, with nothing protecting it except a thin sheet of stamped metal. In a rear-end collision, the tank could be crushed or punctured. Fuel spilled onto hot exhaust components or electrical systems. Fires started. People burned to death in crashes they survived initially. The Ford Pinto became the most infamous example, but the problem was industry-wide. Federal regulations eventually required fuel system integrity standards. Tanks had to be mounted inside the frame rails or in protected areas. Crash testing had to demonstrate that the fuel system would not rupture in a specified impact. Modern cars have plastic tanks in reinforced compartments with crumple zones designed to absorb energy before it reaches the fuel. The old way was a firebomb waiting for the right collision. Engineers knew it. Accountants decided that paying out lawsuits was cheaper than redesigning the fuel system, until the regulations made it non-optional. No side impact protection in doors. Doors on older cars were basically just thin shells of stamped steel with a window mechanism inside. No reinforcement beams. No energy-absorbing structure. In a side impact, the door folded inward and the intruding vehicle hit the occupant directly. Ribs crushed, pelvises shattered, internal organs ruptured. The door provided almost no protection at all. It kept you from falling out. It did not keep other cars from coming in. Side impact standards introduced in the 90s required reinforcement beams in every door, along with padding and eventually side airbags. Modern car doors are heavy because they are full of structural steel designed to resist intrusion. Crash tests now include side pole impacts and angled collisions specifically to test door integrity. The old doors were light. They closed with a satisfying chunk. They also collapsed like soda cans. That is why a modern car door weighs twice what an old one did. Every ounce is there because someone died without it. Vent windows that opened while driving. Those little triangular windows at the front of the door that you could pivot open for airflow. They were brilliant for ventilation before air conditioning became standard. You could direct a stream of fresh air right at your face. Kids loved sticking their hands out and feeling the wind. In a side collision or rollover, that open vent window became a guillotine. Arms were severed, hands were crushed. And in rollover accidents, occupants were partially ejected through the vent window opening, even though the main window was closed. The small opening was just big enough for a child's head and shoulders. Regulations did not specifically ban vent windows, but safety standards around occupant ejection and rollover protection made them impractical. Modern cars are sealed units with climate control. The vent window disappeared, and partial ejections through side windows dropped dramatically. Simple feature, genuine utility, absolutely brutal in the wrong accident. Bench front seats with no separation between driver and passenger, 3 people across the front. No console, no separation, just one long bench seat. In a side impact from the passenger side, the passenger slid directly into the driver. 2 people hit the steering column. In a collision with another passenger vehicle, the lack of separation meant both front occupants could impact each other, the dash, and the wheels simultaneously. Modern bucket seats with a center console create a physical barrier. They also include side bolsters that help keep you in position during a crash. Regulations around occupant retention and crash testing with dummies in multiple positions effectively ended the front bench in passenger cars. Trucks kept them longer, but even there they have mostly disappeared. The bench seat was social. You could sit 3 across, couples could sit close. It was also a terrible idea in any kind of impact. That is why they are gone. No collapsible brake and accelerator pedals. The pedals in older cars were mounted on fixed arms welded directly to the firewall structure. In a frontal crash, the firewall intruded into the cabin and the pedals came with it. Feet were crushed, ankles shattered, lower legs trapped under pedals that had moved 8 or 10 inches rearward and would not move back. Modern pedals are designed to break away or fold downward in a crash. The mechanism releases and the pedal drops toward the floor instead of pushing back into your leg. This is a relatively recent innovation, becoming common in the 2000s. The old pedals were simple and strong and absolutely merciless in a crash. Firefighters cutting people out of wrecks would find feet pinned under pedals that had become part of the wreckage. That does not happen anymore. The pedals let go now. No anti-trap protection on power windows for rear passengers. Even after some manufacturers started adding auto reverse to driver and front passenger windows, rear windows often still had the old-style motors with no obstruction detection. Kids in the back seat were still at risk. A child could put their head out the window and another child could hit the switch, or a pet could step on the control. The window went up with full force and did not stop. It was not until 2008 that federal regulation required all power windows to either have a maximum closing force of 10 pounds or an automatic reversal system if resistance was detected. 10 pounds is not enough to injure. 80 pounds will kill. Modern windows stop and reverse the instant they feel anything in the way. The old ones did not. And children kept dying until the law changed. 18 years into the 21st century before it became mandatory. Let that sink in. Fuel filler necks that vented directly into the passenger cabin. In some older vehicles, especially vans and station wagons, the fuel filler neck ran along the inside of a body panel with no sealed separation from the cabin. Fuel vapors could seep into the passenger area, especially in hot weather or after filling the tank. Passengers got sick. Children in the back of vans inhaled gasoline fumes for hours on road trips. In a collision that ruptured the filler neck, raw gasoline could pour directly into the cabin. Federal regulations required sealed fuel systems with proper venting to the outside and rollover valves to prevent spillage. Modern fuel systems are completely isolated from the cabin. The old ones were not. People just lived with the smell of gasoline on long trips and did not realize they were being poisoned. No crumple zones in the front or rear structure. Cars built before the mid-60s were designed to be strong. Solid steel frames, thick metal body panels, no planned deformation. In a crash, all that strength transferred energy directly into the passenger cabin. The car did not crumple, you did. Modern vehicles have crumple zones, front and rear engineered to collapse in a controlled way and absorb energy before it reaches the occupants. The passenger cell is strong. The ends are designed to fail. Old cars were the opposite. The whole thing was strong and rigid. You took the impact. Crash testing and federal standards around frontal and rear impact protection drove the introduction of crumple zones across the industry. Old cars look tough. They feel solid. In a crash, that solid feeling is exactly what kills you. No door locks that stayed closed in a crash. Older car doors had simple mechanical latches that could pop open in a collision. The door flew open. The occupant was ejected. Ejection is one of the most lethal things that can happen in a crash. Once you are outside the vehicle, you can be run over, crushed by your own car, rolling over you, or thrown into objects at lethal speed. Modern door latches are required to stay closed through specified impact tests. There are also secondary latches that engage if the primary fails. And there are sensors that automatically lock all doors the moment the car starts moving. Old cars had none of that. A solid side impact could pop all the doors open and eject everyone inside. It happened all the time. That is why modern cars lock themselves and why the door latches are over-engineered. Keeping you inside the car is half the battle. Metal dashboards with no padding and sharp toggle switches. We already talked about the solid metal dash, but it is worth focusing on the controls themselves. Toggle switches made of chrome-plated steel sticking out an inch or more. Knobs with sharp edges for the radio and heater. In a crash, these became puncture wounds. Faces impaled on toggle switches, eye sockets destroyed by radio knobs. Federal standards required recessed or padded controls. Modern switches are flush-mounted or covered by soft-touch materials. The tactile feel is not as satisfying. The click of a chrome toggle switch is genuinely pleasurable. It is also a face full of metal in a 30-mile-per-hour crash. That is the trade-off. Beautiful design, deadly consequences. Windshields made of standard glass that shattered into shards. Early windshields were just regular glass. In a crash or even a minor impact from a rock, they shattered into sharp pieces. Occupants were lacerated, faces cut to ribbons, eyes lost. Laminated safety glass became mandatory in the 50s. 2 layers of glass with a plastic inner layer that holds the pieces together when the glass breaks. Modern windshields also have zones designed to break in smaller, less sharp pieces. The old glass was cheap and clear and turned into 1,000 razors the moment it broke. Laminated glass saves faces, literally. No brake lights at eye level. For decades, brake lights were mounted low on the rear corners of the vehicle. In traffic, especially with larger vehicles ahead, those lights were often blocked from view by the trunk or rear bumper of the car in front. Rear-end collisions happened because following drivers did not see the brake lights in time. The third brake light mounted at eye level in the rear window became mandatory in 1986. Studies showed it reduced rear-end collisions by up to 15%. A single light in a more visible position saved thousands of crashes per year. Old cars did not have it. Modern cars do. And the data is undeniable. Eye-level brake lights work. Steering wheels with no padding and metal spokes. The steering wheel itself was often bare metal or hard plastic with thin metal spokes. In a crash, your chest hit the wheel and the spokes fractured ribs or penetrated the chest cavity. Padding requirements and eventually airbag integration changed the steering wheel entirely. Modern wheels have thick padding, collapsible spokes, and an airbag in the center. The old wheels were thin and elegant and would crack your sternum. Beautiful design, absolutely unforgiving. No safety glass in side windows. Side windows were often made of tempered glass that shattered into small chunks, but those chunks were still sharp and could cause cuts. Regulations required tempered glass as a minimum, and modern side windows also have standards around how they break and whether sharp edges remain. The old side windows could explode in a crash and shower occupants with glass fragments. It was better than shards, but still not good. Modern glass is engineered to break safely. Old glass just broke. Bumpers that were decorative instead of functional. Bumpers in the 50s and 60s were chrome-plated styling elements. They absorbed almost no impact energy. A 5-mile-per-hour collision could cost thousands of dollars in damage and push the front structure back into the engine and firewall. Federal bumper standards in the 70s required bumpers to withstand a 5-mile-per-hour impact without damage to the vehicle's safety systems. The bumpers got bigger and uglier. They also worked Modern bumpers are integrated into crumple zones and designed to absorb energy at higher speeds. The old ones were jewelry. They looked incredible. They did nothing. No fuel cutoff switches in a crash. Older cars had no mechanism to shut off the fuel pump in a collision. Fuel kept pumping even after the engine stopped. If the fuel system was damaged, gasoline sprayed onto hot components and started fires. Modern cars have inertia switches that cut power to the fuel pump the instant a crash is detected. The pump stops. The fuel stops flowing. Fires are far less common. Old cars just kept pumping fuel until the battery died or the tank ran dry. People burned. Every one of these regulations was written in blood. Not speculation, not theoretical risk. Actual deaths, actual injuries, actual families who lost people in crashes that should have been survivable. Engineers knew, manufacturers knew, but until regulations forced the changes, the math said it was cheaper to pay settlements than redesign systems. That is the part people forget. These features were not removed because they stopped working. They were banned because they kept killing people and nobody was fixing it voluntarily. Next time you get into a modern car and you feel how heavy the doors are, or you notice the padded dash, or the window stops when your hand is in the way, remember what it replaced. Remember that 11 cents could have saved a child, and manufacturers chose not to spend it until the law made them. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these shocked you most. Next time, I am breaking down safety features that disappeared in the last 10 years that you did not even notice were gone. Some of them you used every day, or thought you did. And here is something that really gets under my skin when I think about it. All of this happened in the United States first because we were the ones with the regulations that actually stuck. Other countries watched. Some copied us. Some did not. Even today, there are vehicles sold in certain parts of the world that would never pass American safety standards. They lack features we consider non-negotiable. They have design flaws we fixed decades ago. And people die in those cars every single day because someone, somewhere, decided the cost savings were worth the body count. That is not ancient history. That is happening right now while you are watching this video. There are children in cars without proper headrests. There are drivers trapped by steering columns that should have collapsed. There are families burning in vehicles that should have had proper fuel system protection. The regulations we fought for in this country saved millions of lives globally because manufacturers eventually realized it was cheaper to build to the highest standard everywhere than to maintain separate designs. That is actually something worth being proud of. American safety standards became the baseline. The world adopted our solutions because they worked. But here is what kills me even more. We stopped innovating so hard in the safety space after the 2000s. The major breakthroughs happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Airbags, electronic stability control, traction control, anti-lock brakes. These were revolutionary. Then we kind of coasted. We made the systems better, we added more airbags, we improved the electronics. But the fundamental approach stayed the same. Keep people inside the vehicle, protect them with structure and restraints, absorb energy before it reaches them. That strategy still works and it still saves lives. But the pace of innovation has slowed. We got comfortable. We assumed we had solved the hard problems. And in some ways we had. But there is always more to do. There are always edge cases. There are always scenarios that the current system does not handle well. That is where the next generation of safety features will come from. Not from regulations written in blood, but from engineers who are thinking ahead instead of waiting for a mandate. Autonomous vehicle safety is the frontier now, because you cannot have a collision if the car never crashes. That is the logic driving billions of dollars in research. But self-driving cars bring their own risks. They have failure modes we have never seen before, sensor errors, software glitches, situations that no amount of testing can predict. We will probably see new regulations written for autonomous vehicles in the next decade, and those regulations will probably be written because of accidents that did not have to happen. That is the pattern. It always is. Someone dies. We investigate. We find out the manufacturer knew about the problem. We get angry. We pass a law. The problem stops. Then we move on to the next preventable tragedy. This is the reality of safety regulation that people do not like to think about. Progress requires sacrifice, not willingly, not happily, but in practice, that is how it works. Every airbag on your dashboard represents someone who died without one. Every door lock that engages automatically is there because people were ejected from cars that should have contained them. Every crumple zone in your car's frame is designed with the knowledge of what happens when vehicles do not have them. This is not pessimistic, this is honest. This is understanding that we live in a world where regulations are not written until someone dies. And once you understand that, you start seeing it everywhere, not just in cars, in every industry, in every product, in every system that affects human life. The regulation exists because the tragedy happened first. That is the order of operations, and it never changes. So, when you are driving in a modern car, you are sitting in a vehicle built from decades of collective suffering. Every feature is there for a reason. Every system has a story. Every material choice reflects something someone learned the hard way. You are not just driving a car. You are driving a monument to everyone who died before the rules changed. And that is something worth thinking about the next time you feel that door lock engage or see that window stop reversing the moment something gets in the way. These features cost money. They add weight. They make manufacturing more complicated. But they work because they were designed by people who understood exactly how badly things could go wrong. If this video made you think about your own vehicle differently, please hit that subscribe button. We are going to keep exploring the engineering decisions that shape the world around you. Some of them will make sense, some will surprise you, and some will make you angry all over again, because there are plenty more stories like these. Plenty more examples of technology that existed long before it became mandatory. Plenty more cases where the solution came after the tragedy instead of before it. That is the nature of progress in a world where regulations follow disasters. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.